Most people think they know Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Amsterdam, the same cities, the same museums, the same crowds, the same queues, the same photographs that 100 million people took before you got there. But Europe is not those cities. Europe is a continent that has been continuously inhabited for hundreds of thousands of years, layered with civilizations that rose and collapsed and left traces in stone, in paint, in water, in the specific way light hits a particular cliff face at a particular hour that most travelers flying into its major airports will never come anywhere close to. A village in Portugal where people built their homes in the gaps between rocks the size of houses. A city in Italy that has been continuously inhabited for 10,000 years, carved directly into the rock of a ravine, inhabited by cave dwellers before the Roman Empire existed. Islands in the North Atlantic where the grass goes to the edge of 600-meter cliffs, and the ocean below is the same ocean that defeated sailors for centuries. An archipelago in the Arctic where polar bears outnumber humans, where you are legally required to carry a rifle outside settlements, and where the northern lights perform above a landscape so extreme and so remote that it feels less like Europe than like a different planet that Europe happens to claim administrative jurisdiction over. These places exist. They are not difficult to find. They are simply never talked about until now. These are 20 hidden places in Europe that nobody talks about. Let's start the countdown. Before we go, subscribe to Rome Folios right now. This is what we do. Every week, the places the world forgot to look at. Hit subscribe. Let's count down. Number 20. Dinant, Belgium. Most people fly over Belgium on their way to somewhere else. The ones who stop tend to stop in Brussels or Bruges and leave believing they've seen the country. They haven't seen Dinant. Pressed against the left bank of the Meuse River, its limestone cliff rising directly from the waterfront, the citadel above, and the Collegiate Church of Notre Dame below, Dinant is one of those small cities whose visual drama so outstrips its international reputation that the first glimpse of it from the river almost feels like catching something the tourism industry forgot to monetize. Adolphe Sax was born here in 1814 and invented the saxophone here, a fact the city commemorates with oversized saxophone sculptures along the waterfront, which should be tacky and somehow isn't because the setting absorbs them into its general improbability. Number 19. Vallée de la Loue, France. France has an embarrassment of riches in terms of landscape, which may be part of why the Loue Valley in the Franche-Comté region remains almost entirely unknown outside a circle of French hiking enthusiasts and fly fishing devotees who treat its location as something close to a private secret. The Loue River emerges from its source, a massive turquoise spring bursting directly from a limestone cliff face, and runs through a valley of extraordinary clarity and calm. Its water, a shade of green-blue that belongs more to an alpine lake than to a river, lined by forested cliffs and punctuated by villages where houses lean over the water on wooden stilts. Courbet was born in Ornans, the valley's main town, and painted the river obsessively throughout his career. Large, dark, intensely observed paintings of water and rock that capture something specific about this particular valley's quality of light that photographs have never quite managed to replicate. Number 18. Trogir, Croatia. Croatia's Dalmatian coast is not, by any honest assessment, undiscovered. But Within a coastline that now hosts tens of millions of visitors annually, concentrated primarily on Dubrovnik and Split, the island city of Trogir receives a small fraction of the attention its architectural coherence and historical depth actually deserve. Connected to the mainland by a single bridge, Trogir's Old Town occupies an island roughly 500 meters long. Its medieval street plan the same plan it had in the 3rd century BC, when it was a Greek colony compressed into a density of Romanesque, Gothic, and Renaissance architecture that UNESCO has described as among the best preserved examples of urban continuity in the Mediterranean. The portal of the Cathedral of St. Lawrence, carved by the Croatian sculptor Radovan in 1240, and one of the finest examples of Romanesque stonework anywhere in the Adriatic, sits at the center of a square where cats outnumber tourists on most mornings of the year, an equilibrium that seems worth preserving. Number 17. Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Plovdiv makes a specific and slightly aggressive claim that is, by most archaeological assessments, substantially accurate. It is the oldest continuously inhabited city in Europe. Human settlement here dates to at least 4000 BC, and possibly significantly earlier, making Plovdiv older than Athens, older than Rome, older than any of the cities that Western education typically presents as the foundations of European civilization. In the center of the modern city, a Roman amphitheater from the 2nd century AD discovered accidentally during construction work in the 1970s sits in nearly pristine condition, still used for outdoor concerts and performances, its marble seating and stage architecture intact enough that a Roman audience transported forward in time would recognize it immediately. The Old Town Quarter, built on 3 hills above the modern center, preserves a collection of 19th century National Revival architecture, tall, asymmetric houses with projecting upper floors in deep blues, greens, and terracottas that makes it one of the most visually distinctive historic neighborhoods anywhere in the Balkans. Number 16. Transfăgărășani, Romania. In the early 1970s, Nicolae Ceausescu, Romania's communist dictator, concerned about the possibility of Soviet invasion along northern routes, ordered the construction of a military road across the Făgăraș Mountains, connecting Transylvania to Wallachia through a pass at over 2,000 meters elevation. The construction took 4 years, killed dozens of workers, and produced one of the most spectacular roads in Europe entirely as an accidental byproduct of military paranoia. The Transfăgărășani climbs from pine forest through alpine meadow, past a glacial lake called Balea that sits in a cirque just below the summit pass, through tunnels blasted through solid rock, in a series of tight switchbacks that, viewed from above, look less like a road and more like a demonstration that roads are possible anywhere if someone decides they need to be. Jeremy Clarkson called it the best road in the world on Top Gear in 2009. The description stuck, and the road has been incrementally busier ever since, which means it moves from barely visited to lightly visited, a level of tourism that the Făgăraș Mountains absorb without significant difficulty. Number 15. Monsanto, Portugal. There is a town in the Serra da Gata hills of central Portugal where the boundary between human construction and natural geology has been negotiated with such specific creativity that it is impossible to say, in places, where the rock ends and the building begins. Monsanto grew between, beneath, and around a collection of granite boulders of such enormous size that they function as walls, roofs, and floors of the houses built in relationship to them, not beside them or around them, but genuinely integrated, the rock as architecture, the architecture as rock. A house here might have a living room ceiling that is a 10-meter granite boulder balanced above it for 60 million years. A street might run through a gap between two rocks that frame it more precisely than any built gateway. A terrace might be the flat top of a boulder 30 meters above the village square. Monsanto was voted the most Portuguese village in Portugal in a 1938 competition, a title that says something about what the country values in itself, a determination, perhaps, to build within constraint rather than against it. Number 14. Chateau de Vianden, Luxembourg. Luxembourg is the country most frequently used as a comparative unit of area for things that are not Luxembourg. Oil spills, deforested regions, affected zones of various disasters are all routinely measured in Luxembourg by journalists who assume everyone knows how large it is. Most people do not know how large it is. Most people do not know much about Luxembourg at all, beyond the fact that it is small and that it is rich and that it is somewhere between Belgium and Germany. What is less known is that it has one of the most dramatically positioned medieval castles in Western Europe. Chateau de Vianden rises above the Our River Valley in the Ardennes Hills of northern Luxembourg. Its towers and ramparts visible from the valley floor in a silhouette that has been used as a backdrop for film productions precisely because it looks more medieval than most things that actually are medieval. It is one of the largest Gothic castle complexes west of the Rhine, counts among its former residents members of the House of Nassau, the dynasty whose descendants include the Dutch royal family, and can be reached from the valley town of Vianden via a gondola lift that provides the most cinematic possible approach to a castle that is already doing everything it can to look like a painting. Number 13. Ohrid, North Macedonia. If you told most Western travelers that a small lake in a country most of them can't locate on a map contains churches and monasteries and Byzantine frescoes that rival anything in Greece or Bulgaria or Serbia, and that the old town surrounding it is both a UNESCO World Heritage Site and functionally affordable in ways that most of Europe stopped being a decade ago, they would be skeptical. Ohrid is real. Lake Ohrid, one of the oldest and deepest lakes in Europe, holds its specific shade of blue-gray depending on the weather, the hour, and the specific combination of sky and cloud above it, the surface shifting between the colors without apparent commitment to any of them. The Church of St. John at Kaneo, a 13th century Byzantine church on a cliff promontory above the lake, is one of the most recognizable images from the Western Balkans. Its small stone structure positioned with the specific intentionality of sacred architecture placed not for accessibility, but for the relationship between the building and the landscape it surveys. Number 12. Lukomir, Bosnia and Herzegovina. At 1,469 meters elevation in the Bjelašnica mountain range south of Sarajevo, Lukomir is the highest permanently inhabited village in Bosnia and Herzegovina, accessible by road only for a few months of the year before snow closes the track, and the village returns to the isolated existence that has, in some form, been its condition for several centuries. The village's houses are built from stone with steeply pitched roofs of wooden shingles, in a style that has not changed significantly since the medieval period. The population mostly elderly, with younger generations having moved to cities during and after the Bosnian War of the 1990s, maintains a degree of traditional agricultural life in summer that is rarely encountered anywhere in Europe at this level of continuity. Standing in Lukomir on a clear day, with the Rakitnica Canyon dropping away below the village and the Dinaric Alps visible to every horizon, you encounter what Europe looked like before the 20th century, normalized the assumption that rural life would eventually converge with urban life in terms of material culture and physical infrastructure. It has not converged here. Whether it will is a question the village's demographics make increasingly urgent. Number 11. Berat, Albania. The Ottoman Empire left physical traces across a significant portion of southeastern Europe, but nowhere outside Turkey itself is the urban legacy of the Ottoman period as intact, as densely preserved, and as visually coherent as in the old city of Berat in southern Albania. Berat's most immediately distinctive feature is visible from the hillside opposite the rows of large, multi-paned windows that cover the facades of its historic houses, so numerous and so consistently positioned that the effect, from a distance, of white plaster walls almost entirely covered in glazed openings earned the city its popular name, the City of 1,000 Windows. The Kala Citadel, inhabited since antiquity and still home to several hundred permanent residents within its Byzantine walls, overlooks a city where three different communities, Christian, Muslim, and Bektashi, maintained separate neighborhoods across centuries of Ottoman administration, leaving a layered religious architecture that includes active Orthodox churches, mosques, and tekkes within a few hundred meters of each other. It is, by any useful measure, one of the most significant historic cities in the Balkans. It receives a fraction of the visitors that comparable sites in Croatia or Greece attract annually. If you've made it to the top 10 and the best is genuinely still coming, subscribe to Rome Folios right now. Every week, a new place the world forgot to look at. Hit subscribe. Let's keep going. Number 10. Alberobello, Italy. In the Valle d'Itria in Puglia, southeastern Italy, there is a town where approximately 1,500 buildings are constructed from a material combination dry-stacked limestone, no mortar, conical stone roofs that exists nowhere else in Europe in anything approaching this concentration and this state of preservation. Truly, the origin of the specific construction technique is debated. One popular explanation, probably apocryphal but widely repeated, attributes the unmortared construction to a tax-dodge buildings assembled without permanent bonding material could be rapidly disassembled if royal inspectors arrived to assess taxable structures reassembled after they left. The archaeological reality is more complex, but the story persists because it sounds exactly like the kind of practical ingenuity that a peasant population under feudal taxation would develop. Whatever their origin, the Trulli of Alberobello form a neighborhood, the Rione Monti and Rione Aya Piccola districts, of several hundred conical roofed structures that cluster together in a way that produces, from above, one of the most visually distinctive roofscapes in the world. Number 9. Rila Monastery, Bulgaria. In the Rila Mountains of southwestern Bulgaria, at an elevation of 1,147 meters in a valley surrounded by the highest peaks of the Balkan Peninsula, the Rila Monastery has been, since its founding in the 10th century by the hermit saint Ivan Rilski, the spiritual center of Bulgarian Orthodox Christianity. The monastery's current architecture, mostly dating to the 19th century following a fire that destroyed much of the medieval complex, is organized around a large central courtyard of extraordinary visual impact. 5 levels of striped black and white arcaded galleries surrounding a freestanding medieval tower and a cathedral whose interior frescoes, covering every available surface in a dense visual theology, represent one of the most complete examples of Bulgarian national revival religious painting anywhere in the country. The monastery is not merely a tourist destination. It is an actively functioning monastic community, and the quality of silence that settles over the courtyard in the early morning before the day visitors arrive carries the specific weight of a silence that has been cultivated and maintained in this specific place for over 1,000 years. Number 8. Kotor, Montenegro. The Bay of Kotor, sometimes called the southernmost fjord in Europe. Technically a submerged river canyon rather than a glacially carved fjord, but visually indistinguishable from one cuts deep into the Montenegrin coast in a way that European tourists encountered through Venetian trade connections for centuries before the area appeared in English language travel. Writing. The medieval walled city of Kotor sits at the innermost point of the bay's inner bay. Its Venetian-influenced architecture compressed into a small triangle of land between the water and the cliff above it, the city walls climbing directly up the mountain to a fortress at 260 meters that required over 200 years to complete. The bay itself, water so calm in the morning that the reflections of the surrounding mountains are nearly indistinguishable from the mountains themselves, is one of the most visually compelling natural harbors in the Drup, Mediterranean. Number 7. Hallstatt, Austria. There is a village in the Salzkammergut Lake district of Upper Austria that has been photographed so many times. From such a specific angle, the pastel-colored houses reflected in the Hallstätter Sea, the Protestant church spire rising above them, the Dachstein Massif behind that, it has become one of the most replicated townscapes in the world, including an exact replica built in China's Guangdong province in 2012 by a developer who felt the original was simply too far away. The original is more remarkable than any photograph suggests. Not because the photograph fails to capture the beauty, it captures it accurately, but because it fails to capture the scale of what the village is built on. Hallstatt's houses cling to a slope so steep that some of them are essentially built on stilts, their foundations on the cliff face and their upper floors extending over the lake below. The narrow road through the village barely exists. The only way to reach it historically was by boat across the lake, and the boat remains the most civilized approach. The salt mine above Hallstatt, the oldest in the world, in continuous operation since approximately 1000 BC, descends into the mountain on wooden slides that miners have used, in various forms, for 3,000 years. Number 6. Gjirokastër, Albania. The UNESCO World Heritage listing for Gjirokastër describes it as a rare example of a well-preserved Ottoman town. The description is accurate but insufficient. Gjirokastër is built almost entirely from gray limestone stone roofs, stone walls, stone streets, stone stairs in a palette so monochromatic and so deliberately assembled into the steep hillside above the Drinos Valley that it produces a visual effect closer to a geological formation than a city. The roofs are what define it. Heavy stone tiles, not unlike fish scales, cover every building, a style dictated by the specific availability of local stone and the specific demands of Balkan winter, producing a roofscape visible from the surrounding mountains that looks almost military in its density and uniformity. A fortress of Ottoman origin dominates the hill above the town, its walls enclosing a collection of structures that have been used as, variously, a castle, a prison, and a museum, and that now contain, among other things, a captured American U, 2 reconnaissance aircraft from the Cold War era, which arrived in circumstances that even now are not entirely clear and has been on display there ever since with minimal contextual explanation. Enver Hoxha, Albania's communist dictator, was born here. The house where he was born is still standing and still pointed out to visitors with the slightly ambiguous pride of a city that produced someone historically significant whose legacy is genuinely complicated. Number 5. Faroe Islands, Denmark. 18 islands in the North Atlantic between Norway and Iceland, receiving approximately 320 days of rain per year, inhabited by approximately 55,000 people and a significantly larger number of sheep. The Faroe Islands present conditions that should, by most conventional assessments of what constitutes an appealing travel destination, be prohibitive. And yet, the cliff of Tralanipa on the island of Vagar drops 142 meters directly into the Atlantic, and on its western edge, the small lake of Servagsvatn appears, due to a combination of optical illusion and actual elevation difference, to sit suspended directly above the ocean, its water seeming to pour off the edge into the sea. The image is one of the most shared landscape photographs from any European destination in the past decade. The reality, which requires a relatively committed hike in weather that can change from clear to horizontal rain in minutes, exceeds the photograph in the way that landscapes of this severity always exceed photographs. Grass on the Faroes grows to the absolute edge of cliffs that fall hundreds of meters to the ocean. The light on a clear afternoon, genuinely clear, which happens turns the grass a shade of green that does not occur in more temperate climates, saturated by the specific combination of angle, moisture, and quality of Atlantic light. The villages, painted in primary colors on lower coastal slopes, represent a specific aesthetic of practicality become beauty that seems to have evolved on these islands, independent of any architectural movement or design tradition, the colors chosen for visibility and fog, the low profiles chosen for wind resistance, the whole effect producing something that photographs consistently and defies improvement. Number 4. Svalbard, Norway. At 78 degrees north latitude, Svalbard is the northernmost permanently inhabited place in the world, a Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic Ocean where the midnight sun lasts for 4 months and the polar night for another 4, where the largest settlement, Longyearbyen, has a population of around 2,400 people, where you are legally required by Norwegian law to carry a firearm capable of deterring a polar bear whenever you leave the town boundaries. And where the scenery combines glacier, mountain, Arctic tundra, and sea ice in proportions that produce a landscape with no adequate comparison anywhere in conventional Europe. The ghost town of Pyramiden, a Soviet-era coal mining settlement abandoned in 1998, stands on the shores of the Bilfjorden Fjord in a state of preservation that time and the Arctic cold have maintained almost accidentally. Furniture in the apartments, books on the library shelves, a grand piano in the cultural center, the Lenin statue in the main square still facing south, with the specific stern optimism of Soviet public sculpture. The aurora borealis performs above Svalbard on clear nights from late August through April, over a landscape so devoid of light pollution that the displays develop in full visibility from the edge of town, no special equipment or remote location required. And the polar bears, approximately 3,000 of them in the Svalbard archipelago, outnumbering the human population, move through the tundra and sea ice with the casual authority of animals for whom this landscape was designed and for whom human presence is simply an occasional curiosity. Number 3. Matera, Italy. There is a city in the Basilicata region of southern Italy that has been continuously inhabited for approximately 10,000 years. Not 10,000 years since its founding. 10,000 years of people living in it continuously, the same city, on the same geological formation, through every civilizational change that the Mediterranean world has undergone since the end of the last ice age. The Sassi di Matera, the stone city, carved into the sides of a ravine cut by the Gravina River, is the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in Europe, possibly one of the oldest in the world. The cave dwellings that make up the oldest sections were inhabited by the poorest residents of Matera until 1952, when the Italian government forcibly relocated the population to modern housing on the plateau above, declaring the Sassi a national disgrace, a symbol of southern Italian poverty that the modern Italian state could not permit to continue. The people left, the caves emptied, and then something unexpected happened. The Sassi were recognized, first by architectural historians, then by UNESCO in 1993, and finally by the Italian tourism industry, as one of the most significant surviving examples of human settlement connected to the geological landscape it occupies. And the caves began to be converted carefully, with remarkable architectural sensitivity, into hotels, restaurants, and residences that now draw visitors from across Europe and beyond. Seen at night from the opposite bank of the ravine, the Sassi are lit individually from within their cave openings, hundreds of pinpoints of warm light climbing the cliff face, the ancient settlement transformed by darkness into something that looks like a constellation fallen onto rock. It is one of the most extraordinary night views in Europe. It is in a town in the south of Italy that most American travelers have never considered visiting. Number 2. Meteora, Greece. The Thessaly Plain in central Greece is flat in the way that agricultural plains are flat extensively, productively, unremarkably. And then, at its northwestern edge, something happens to the geology that should not be possible. Rock pillars rise from the plain. Not gently, not gradually. They simply appear columns of gray sandstone and conglomerate, deposited by rivers millions of years ago, and then left standing as the softer surrounding rock eroded away over geological time, rising up to 400 meters above the valley floor in shapes that have been compared to columns, to cathedrals, to fingers, to none of these things adequately. Monks arrived on these pillars in the 14th century, drawn by the combination of physical inaccessibility and the specific quality of silence and altitude that the rocks provided. They built monasteries on the summits. By the 16th century, 24 monasteries had been established on Meteora's rocks, accessible only by rope nets or long ladders that could be pulled up behind the monks, providing a security that no military fortification at ground level could match. 6 monasteries remain active today. Their architecture built against, into, and around the specific contours of each individual rock summit produces structures that look from below as though they grew from the rock itself rather than being constructed upon it. The view from the monastery of St. Stephen at dawn, with morning mist filling the valley below the rocks and the other monasteries emerging from the cloud across the plain, is one of those images that photography captures adequately and experience exceeds completely. Number 1. Sintra, Portugal. 30 kilometers west of Lisbon, in the Serra de Sintra hills above the Atlantic coast, the Portuguese royal family built something in the 19th century that the word palace does not adequately describe. The Palacio da Penha was constructed between 1842 and 1854 under the direction of King Ferdinand II, a German prince who came to Portugal through marriage and brought with him a romantic architectural sensibility that was, even by the standards of an era defined by elaborate fantasy construction, considered extravagant. The palace is red and yellow and blue. and towers in Moorish style and battlements in Gothic style, and a clock tower and a triton sculpted above the main gate, and a kitchen decorated with azulejo tiles and a room for every conceivable ceremonial function, all compressed onto a peak in the Serra de Sintra that sits almost perpetually in cloud. Byron visited Sintra in 1809 and described it as a glorious Eden. The description has been repeated so many times since that it has become a travel writing cliche. It has become a cliche because it is accurate. The Quinta de Regalera, a nearby estate whose owner at the turn of the 20th century was more interested in esoteric symbolism and initiatic architecture than in conventional garden design, contains a well, the initiation well, that descends 9 floors underground in a spiral staircase wide enough for one person, lit from above by the sky, visible through the opening at the top, used in ceremonies that the estate's original owner deliberately left undocumented. The forest of Sintra, dense, damp, permanently on the edge of mist, surrounds all of it with the specific atmosphere of a landscape that exists in the boundary between what you can explain and what you cannot. It is 40 minutes by train from central Lisbon. It is the most extraordinary landscape in Western Europe that is not on every tourist's first list. This is number 1. 20 places, 1 continent, an inexhaustible supply of things that nobody talks about. Europe is larger, older, and more surprising than the itineraries most people follow through it would suggest. These were 20 of the reasons why. If this video gave you even one place to add to your list, share it with someone who needs to see it too. Subscribe to Rome Folios if you haven't already. Every week, somewhere the world forgot to look. And leave a comment which of these 20 surprised you the most. I'll see you in the next one.